Hello, Chill Computer Guy. Today we're in Bitwig Studio 2.3.4. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's having a good night. Had a very busy day today. It was 90 degrees out, and so I walked down to the lake and put my toe in, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so really a lot of hot weather over here today. Also tonight we're watching for trains. So there you go. We're watching a live stream of a train crossing in Latch. I always have this kind of on a side screen because I like watching trains. I don't know what it is. So if that train comes through, it's going to make a lot of noise. So I'll probably, if it doesn't interrupt our lesson, I guess that's fine. But we'll work it out. We'll work the train into the lesson. How about that? Today's lesson has to do with the FM-4. Now what I'm going to do is in the next couple of months or so, I'm going to try to eventually do all the instruments here in Bitwig Studio. Why I want to focus on the instruments is because you have the ability to pitch slide in your MIDI notes, and it's exclusive to Bitwig only devices. And just having that ability alone in the MIDI grid, I've found to be most powerful. And so because of that, I really do want to focus attention on teaching and learning to the fullest extent all the Bitwig instruments. Now, the FM-4 is probably my favorite Bitwig instrument. Just because it's FM modulation. And so FM stands for frequency modulation. And what's great about the FM-4 is you can get pretty much any sound imaginable out of it. But it's not the easiest device in the world to program. Learning what's going on, or learning like what each potentiometer, and mainly the modulation matrix, this part down here, this part is probably the most confusing. But once you understand what everything does, it makes this a much, much easier instrument to program, and it's actually quite a unique and fun instrument to program. And one of my favorite things about this instrument is the noise generator. Just the noise generator alone is just such a good noise generator. Oftentimes I'll plug this into a track and just use the noise oscillator, and just from the sound you can get out of it. Let's go ahead and turn this thing on. We'll click right here, and you can see the whole thing lights up. We're going to also click here to turn on our spectrum analyzer. And now to the far left here is a note latch. Now a note latch, what that is when I hit a key on a keyboard, it will latch it. In other words, it will hold it down for me. Think of it as a finger. Now, rather than sit here and have to strike the key as I adjust parameters on the FM-4, I'm going to go ahead and turn on this the note latch, and now I'm going to hit the C3. And you'll see this MIDI, the MIDI indicator, which is always right here. It's always a yellow light that appears here, and it will appear here. You'll see the MIDI information will come into the note latch, and then it will stay on right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit C3, and it stays on. So now we actually have MIDI information going into the FM-4. So now let's check out this noise generator. I'm going to turn it on by clicking the N, and then it will light up. And then to the right of that is the mixer. At the very bottom of the mixer is the N, so that's the noise generator. So as we turn that up, you can see we're getting some activity on the spectrum. And what we'll do is we'll bring the frequency of the noise up. See, this is 1.2 hertz right now, so that's way too low, lower than you can hear. As we bring it up, you can see activity in the spectrum analyzer as well as in the noise graph right here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the frequency up, and then I'm going to add some drive and then some Q. Now, this whole thing here is basically a noise oscillator with a filter kind of built in. And it has a built-in drive here. So as I increase the drive, you're going to get a whole lot of just distortion, overtones, and just listen to what this noise generator can do. And it's just the noise generator. Check it out. So just the unevenness and just the analogy fuzzy feeling of that noise generator is just really, really nice. So just the noise generator by itself is something I find myself using in this instrument. Just the noise generator. But there's more to this instrument than that. Like I was saying, FM is frequency modulation. What you have here is you have 4 identical sine wave generators. That's what they are. Now a sine wave is a perfect, it's like an S. It's like a perfect, it's the most pure waveform, the most pure tone, if you will. But what makes FM unique is you can take one sine wave and modulate the frequency of that wave using another sine wave. Now, like I was saying, a sine wave is a pure tone with no overtones. When you modulate the frequency with another sine wave, you start to get overtones. You start to get this just crusty kind of chaos. And if you understand the parameters of the chaos, you can kind of put a bit of a leash on it and be able to use it to your advantage when you're making your music. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn on oscillator 1 here. Now you can see there's 2 values, and I have recommendations for these values. The knob to the right of here is a mod amount, okay? What this is doing is this is sending this sine wave to the modulation matrix, okay? You can send 100%, 50%, any percentage from 0, which is off, all the way to 100%. Okay, what's important to understand is when you send this to the modulation matrix, it's vertical. Okay, it is a vertical. It basically energizes the vertical column. Remember, modulation is vertical. So when I turn this up all the way, I am modulating this entire column 1. Okay, very important to understand that. Now, let's skip past over to this one over here. Now this is actually the volume or the amplitude of that oscillator. Let's go ahead and crank that up. Of course we're at 0 hertz, so we can't hear it. But if we were to double click this and type in 50 or 200, an operator or an oscillator, they're both sine waves. They're pure tones, okay? So the top number is the ratio. If you leave the ratio at 0, it doesn't matter what key you hit on the keyboard, all the notes will have the exact same pitch. Okay? The number below here is an adjustment based on your ratio. Okay? Now that the ratio is 0, you can't hear anything because we're hearing 0 hertz. But let's sweep this up, and I hope you have some bass frequencies because we're going to hit the bass frequency. As we sweep this up, take a look at the operator 1 wave. Also, as we get up around 40 or 50 hertz, unless you're listening on laptop speakers, you should be able to hear this. So again, we're going to activate the note latch, and we're going to hit the C3. And so now you can see that oscillator 1 at 200 hertz. Okay, and you can visually see the 200 hertz right there. And you can't hear it because the volume is down. But the thing is if you turn this modulation up, you're now modulating 200 hertz down this column right here. Okay, so vertically down this column is 200 hertz. And let's go ahead and turn on oscillator 2, and I'm going to go to 200 hertz here. And let's turn up the volume of oscillator 2. Now, what I want you to hear is I'm going to use oscillator 1 to modulate oscillator 2. Now, this is when the modulation matrix starts to get confusing. If you always think of modulation in a vertical sense, you'll know that 200 hertz is going vertically down this column. So if we want to affect oscillator 2, we would use this value right here. Let's go ahead and listen to that. And so what you're doing is you're causing imperfections in that perfect sine wave. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about frequency modulation. Why the operators, why they use sine waves is because that perfect wave is so pristine and so perfect that that's the wave worth modulating. Okay, let's go ahead and turn this modulation amount down again. And you can see we have oscillator 1, oscillator 2, both playing 200 hertz thanks to the note latch. Let's go ahead and turn the note latch off. And then you can see that now we're not getting any MIDI information in. So we're going to talk about this ratio right here. Now this ratio, the top number here, is very important to understand. Now with this value at 0, the MIDI keyboard, the key you hit on the MIDI keyboard will not affect the pitch. This is the lowest key on my MIDI keyboard. This is the highest key. I'm hitting a bunch of different keys all over the keyboard, but you hear that they all have the exact same frequency. That's because this ratio is 0. Now this ratio, it's very important to understand that you can't just pick random numbers on both these, because this is 0, you're hearing exactly 200 hertz. Okay, that's exactly 200 hertz. If you were to go right here, you can see that it's exactly 200 hertz, okay? Now you'll also notice another thing about the spectrum analyzer is it is a perfect sine wave, but you can see there's overtones, and that's a Bitwig exclusive. That's one of the things I actually like about the FM-4 because the sine waves are analogy in that way. Sometimes if you take like serum or something, the sine waves are so clean, they're just too pristine. And so these sine waves do have overtones, but that, in my opinion, makes them unique. Okay, so back to the keyboard. All keys, same exact frequency. So that's not going to work. What you want to do is this ratio amount, you want to keep it divisible by 2 basically. And what I do is I double. Okay, so the lowest possible amount I would put in here is 0.25. And then double that amount. So 0.25 and then 0.50, 1.0, 2.0, 4.0, 8.0, 16.0, 32.0, and 64.0. And that's it. Those are the only ratios you should ever put in here. Now this goes up to 99.0, but you don't want to just put random amounts in here because you're gonna end up with sounds coming out that are just, the pitches will just conflict, and you will not end up with useful sound coming out of the FM-4. It'll just sound like mumbled up garbage. It will not sound good to your ear. And so keep this ratio in one of those values. 0.25, 0.50, 1.0, 2.0, 4.0, 8.0, 16, 32, and 64. Just trust me. You'll end up getting somewhere. You'll end up with a sound that you can actually use, okay? So what I recommend is 1.0, okay? 1.0 here is what I recommend if you're going to use the volume here. Now, once you put this on 1.0, I also recommend zeroing this out, okay? Now, what this is going to do is this is going to give you a true pitch for this instrument. If this is 1.0 and this is 0, when you hit middle C, you should get your 444. And so 1.0 and 0 is going to give you the true pitch of this instrument. You'll notice now that if I switch keys, I'm getting a different pitch with each key. So that's very crucial to understand. Now at 1.0, 1 octave is 1 octave on the keyboard, okay? So this is a C2, C3, C4, C5. So you're getting a true tone. If you put this on any of the other ratios I mentioned, 0.25, 0.50, 1.0, 2.0, 4.0, 8.0, 16, 32, or 64, you're going to basically get this, it doubles the amount of notes in your octave. So that's 2.0. If you go 1.0, then, of course, you can put this on 0.25, which what that's going to do is it's going to pump it way down. 0.25 or 0.50, very good for bass sounds. Nice. And again, you get those overtones. As you can see in the spectrum analyzer, you get those overtones, and that gives it that real analog-y feel. This is one of the things I really, really love about the FM-4, is the fact that, yes, these are sine waves, but they're not perfect. So, yeah, that's what I recommend here is 1.0 and then 0. And you will get the true pitch from the instrument. Not only that, but you'll get your MIDI notes to work together, and you'll get a noise that you'll get a sound that comes out of the FM-4 that is usable. So yeah, based on that information, I'm going to go ahead and put all these at 1.0, and then 0 this out. And of course, if you double-click, you can put in any value you want in here. Okay, so now all these are pretty much operating as separate sine waves. So if you hit the middle C, all of these are the exact same. Now this is when the ratio comes in kind of handy, because let's say on the second one we're going to go 2.0. So as you can see, what we did here is we gave this the true pitch. This one's going to be double the pitch. This one's going to be half of the standard pitch, and then this one is going to be a quarter of the standard pitch. And the bottom value is zeroed out, okay? There's no reason really to adjust this lower value unless you're doing, unless you're using these as modulators and want to really get some very specific modulation. But as you can see, the mod is down on all these. So the modulation matrix, there's nothing going on with it. But you can see that the volume, you're only hearing oscillator 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn up the volume of all 4 oscillators, and you can see that the 4 oscillators are going to be harmonizing. Again, we'll have the standard octave, an octave higher, and then an octave lower, and then 2 octaves lower here. So let's go ahead and take a listen here. There's a couple of chords there, but you can see you're harmonizing. You're taking all 4 sine waves and you're harmonizing. Isn't that beautiful? Not only that, but you can add some noise to it also. Oh my God, here comes a train. Here comes a train. Look, you can see it. You see it? See the light? Here it comes. Oh, here comes a train right in the middle of the lesson. Oh God. Oh geez, here it comes. Oh shit. Wow. All right, let's go ahead and put that back over there. Anyway, we saw a train. That's pretty exciting. But listen to that just fuzzy bass sound. I really am a big fan of that. Okay, let's go ahead and turn the volume of everything down, because what we're going to do now is we're going to start to use the modulation matrix, okay? Turn the volume of everything down. Now, a note that I did want to be sure to pass along is you can right-click and you can save your default preset here. What I have done is I'm going to load my default preset here, And again, you can adjust this exactly how you want it and then save it as your default preset. But you can see my preset, everything is grayed out, everything's turned off, everything's zeroed out. We have our decay and our sustain up all the way, and we have our main output zeroed 0 dB. So there's no gain, there's no... This is the default preset I use just because I like to start from scratch on all my sounds and I want everything zeroed out. But something to note about this preset is these are set to 0. A better preset might be setting these all to 1, but I like them at 0 just because I'm probably going to layer this stuff different anyway. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to turn on oscillator 1. Okay, we're going to make sure it's 1.0, the standard pitch. Okay, and then we're going to send some volume up through there. So there's the volume right there. So each oscillator, you can either send it to the modulation matrix or you can send it to the mixer. So you can give it some... amplitude, the first operator and or oscillator, and that's the same for all 4 of them. All 4 of them have a mod and have an amplitude. Okay, so you can send it to the modulation matrix, or you can send it to the main amplitude, the main volume, or you can send it to both. Okay, personally, the way I work is I like having, they're called carriers, basically dedicated oscillators that I'm using to modulate with. For example, I'm going to use oscillator 4 here, and again, I'm going to set this at 0.5, okay? So this is basically giving me a lower octave. But what I'm going to do with this is I'm not going to turn up the volume. Instead, I'm going to turn up the mod, okay? So basically, oscillator 4 is, again, it's vertical. This vertical column right here is being modulated, and it's being modulated 100%. So there's a lot of modulation running through there. If we wanted to modulate the first oscillator using the 4th oscillator, you have to be in the column of the 4th oscillator. And then all you got to do is just turn up this value here. So let's go ahead and listen to that. Now, something that I recommend with the modulation matrix is be careful with this amount. If you go too far, it will basically clip the oscillator, and you'll end up with a sound that's not very conducive to aesthetic. So I like to keep these fairly low. I don't really crank them up too much. All right, so let's go ahead and also modulate with oscillator 3. And I'm going to actually set this to 2.0. So this is going to give me a very, very fast modulation. And then, of course, this is oscillator 3, so it's column 3. And I want to modulate oscillator 1, so here I am. I'm going to go ahead and turn on this filter here. Let's open that up. And so you can hear that we got a pretty usable bass right there. You know, it's analogy, it's fuzzy. Let's go ahead and add some noise to it and see what we can get there. I mean, there's the top of your bass right there. But what I like to do is I like to use this with 2 oscillators basically doing the modulating and maybe 2 oscillators doing the amplitude. You know, let's add the second oscillator here. Let's give it 0.50, so it's going to be a lower pitch because we're working on a bass sound. And now again, we know 3 and 4 are the 2 oscillators that are modulating, but we also can modulate using the noise. So what I'm going to do with this second oscillator is I'm going to modulate it using the noise. So we're going to turn the mod up all the way, and of course, vertical. Remember vertical, this is the column. So you know oscillator 1 and 2 are right here. So I'm going to go with oscillator 2 here. There's another train. Look at that. There's another train right there. It's another train. Look at that. There's another train. Yeah. FM-4. I love the FM-4. It's like I say, it's my favorite instrument here in Bitwig Studio. Once you start to utilize the pitch glide, the way you can glide the pitch from one note to the next in the MIDI, when you're writing your MIDI, when you're writing your chord progressions, once you start to experiment with that and you realize you can only use that with Bitwig instruments, it really makes you want to master these Bitwig instruments because they're the ability to pitch slide in as far as MIDI information. I mean, I guess you could automate all that, but just the ability to write with pitch slides is really cool to me. And so for that reason, I am really working hard at learning these Bitwig instruments. And so there's going to be more. So be sure to subscribe because this is the FM-4, and then I'm also going to do the polysynth. I'm going to do the Phase 4, which actually is the newest synth, and that's a very powerful synth. And I'm also going to do, pretty much all the instruments. I might do the organ. Yeah, I'll do the organ. The organ's actually, I really, really love the organ. Even though it's a minimalistic, simple thing, I love what you can do with the organ. So that's coming up as well. But polysynth, I've already started doing, and so that's in the process of getting done. But for now, we're checking out the FM-4. So let's go ahead and recap real quick here. All right, so yeah, that's it. That's the FM-4, a very, very powerful synthesizer. Like I say, it's my favorite instrument device here in Bitwig Studio. And understanding it, once you understand it, you'll realize how powerful it is and how unique it is and how kind of analog-y. That's what I like about it also. It has a real kind of analog-y kind of feel to it. You know, you add a little distortion to this and you got yourself a nice chunky sounding bass, you know. The noise generator, just the noise generator alone, is probably the coolest noise generator I've used as far as default devices. Just got a really great noise generator. So you got your 4 sine waves. You have your noise generator. You can blend them all together. You have a modulation matrix, so one oscillator can modulate another oscillator. Then you have your amplitude envelope and your basic controls, and you're good to go. So yeah, that's it. The 2 most important things are keeping these ratios correct. The top value should be 0.25, 0.50, 1.0, 2.0, 4.0, 8.0, 16.0, 32.0, 64.0. Okay, do not stray from those values. The bottom number should be left at 000, especially if you're using your audio. I mean, you can tune these a fifth up if you want to do that. You know, you can, but putting in random values here and random values here will get you into trouble. It will, the FM-4 will start to output undesirable tones, undesirable sounds. And so, you know, don't just put random values in here, because it's gonna sound pretty ugly, you know. So I recommend 000 and then 1.0. That's a good starting value right there, and that's going to give you basically the true pitch of the oscillator and proper keyboard tracking. Okay, that's the most important thing to understand, other than the fact that when you use the oscillator as a modulation source, remember vertical. Okay, the modulation matrix, modulation is vertical, amplitude is horizontal. Okay, that's super important. Okay, and so yeah, check it out. Take the FM-4, take every control, reset every single control, and start to play with it from scratch, using what you've learned as far as keeping the ratios correct and remembering that modulation is vertical and amplitude is horizontal. And with those two things alone, you can start to really build sounds. And the fact that you have these scopes so you can actually kind of see what's going on with the sound is really, really quite unique and cool. So huge hats off to Bitwig Studio. I love this DAW. It's basically the only DAW I'm going to really do tutorials on much anymore. But yeah, check out these Bitwig instruments, because the thing about the Bitwig instruments is in the MIDI grid, you can slide individually from note to note. You can slide the pitch individually from note to note in the MIDI grid, and that's just so powerful to me. It's very easy to come up with a hook that way, you know, just sliding your MIDI, sliding your individual, you know, sliding the individual pitch of each note in your MIDI grid is really, really powerful. And Bitwig devices do that, and so they're worth learning. And so that's why I've taken a lot of extra time to really learn these. And like I say, I have the polysynth coming up as well, so be sure to subscribe. Check that out. Chill Computer Guy. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. Comment down below. Let me know what you think about the FM-4. Let me know what you think about Bitwig Studio. Let me know what you think about the fact that Bitwig Studio in the MIDI grid, you can slide the pitch of individual notes, and how unique and cool that is.